There's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello, BookTube. I'm Sean of Sean Breathes Books, and here is another book haul. I haven't had one for a couple of weeks. There's just been a lot of things on the go, but it's time to get cracking on this overflowing stack of books that have come into the house. Here is another Szumigalski book. Szumigalski was one of Saskatchewan's best-known poets. She's been dead for several years now, but I remember her from when I went to literary readings in Saskatoon in the 80s and 90s. One of her nieces is an old friend of mine, and she sent me a whole box full of Szumigalski books, including this one, her memoir, The Word, the Voice, the Text, The Life of a Writer. It was published in 1990. And it's actually a mixture of poems and autobiographical text. I think I'm not going to skip ahead to some prose. I'm just going to read the first poem in the book, which is called Our Sullen Art. The language of poetry has something to do with the open mouth, the tongue that jumps up and down like a child on a shed roof, calling, "Ha ha, and who's the dirty rascal now?" The same boy sent to his room for punishment leans from his window, listening for animals far away in the woods, strains his ears to catch even the slightest sound of rage, but nothing howls. Even the hoot of owls in the dusk is gentle. He hears the tiny snarl of the shrew, the rasp of the snail's foot on the leaf, the too-high squeaking of bats, which comes to his head as the vibration of distant hacksaws. He hums, with his lips tight shut. He stands there listening and humming almost through the short night, then falls into the tangle of sheets and blankets, where fitfully he sleeps while slowly the window grays to 4 panes of bleak light. The day's first traffic travels carefully past the windows and doors of the shut house so as not to awaken in the child those savage cries, our violent, our pathetic language of poems. Well, that knocked my socks off. Next, I have a book by Rhys that I have not read. It is her autobiography called Smile Please, an unfinished autobiography. I believe it was published by her estate in 1979. But that print is awfully small, so I could be wrong. I'll read the opening section from the title chapter, which is entitled Smile Please. "Smile, please," the man said, not quite so serious. He'd dodged out from behind the dark cloth. He had a yellow-black face and pimples on his chin. I looked down at my white dress, the one I had got for my birthday, and my legs, and the white socks coming halfway up my legs, and the black shiny shoes with the strap over the instep. "Now," the man said. "Keep still," my mother said. I tried, but my arm shot up of its own accord. "Oh, what a pity," she moved. "You must keep still," my mother said, frowning. And this is a book on storytelling, a non-fiction kind of essayistic book. Yeah, I'm not sure how to describe it. On storytelling, by an Indigenous writer who recently passed away, Harold Johnson. The Power of Story, on Truth, the Trickster, and New Fictions for a New Era. I know that Lindy has talked about him on her channel. I don't remember if she's talked about this book, but I picked this up at a book sale. It came out in 2022, the year of his death. Here's the opening paragraph from a chapter or essay called The Power of Story. "It has become common in situations like this to give what people are calling a land acknowledgement. Well, I want to do something like that as well. But I'm not going to simply acknowledge the people who originally occupied this land, my ancestors the Niahau and our cousins the Métis. Instead, I want to acknowledge the actual land we are sitting on. All these trees, and that water over there, and this grass, and all the animals, and the birds, and everything else, and the spirits of this place, are all part of a shared story that we, Indigenous and non-Indigenous people alike, are included in. The land, us, the water, the sky, we're all part of one big, beautiful story." And this is another novel by the author of one of my favorite works of fiction. His name is J.L. Carr, and this is his novel, The Harpole Report, and he, of course, is the author of A Month in the Country, which I have read and reread more than probably any other book. This one was first published in 1972, and this is published by J.L. Carr's own small press, the Quince Tree Press. I was planning to buy it directly from his website. He's long dead, but his son still maintains it. But they only accepted a type of bank transfer that I've never heard of and I couldn't do from Canada. But I actually got the same edition from Blackwell. So I've got my first Quince Tree Press edition of a J.L. Carr novel. Heidi and I, buddy, read a biography of J.L. Carr. I remember the author was Byron Rogers. Here's the cover. It's one of the best literary biographies I've ever read. And he makes much of this period in J.L. Carr's life that gave rise to this novel. J.L. Carr had so many disparate experiences, it's hard to believe they all happened or were made to happen in the same person's life. And one of them is, I forget exactly when, I think it was like in the 40s or something. He went out to America. He was a Brit through and through, but he went to America and taught high school in this country, you know, in some small town in the Midwest or something, like Montana or something. And he became a local legend, so that he went back 20 years later, and the legends about him still continued. And this is his novel based on that experience. It looks like the first chapter is in the form of a superintendent's report on a teacher, and it wouldn't be necessarily have any vitality in a standalone way, so I'll just leave it at that. This will be a buddy read with Heidi of My Reading Life. We're not sure if we'll get to it this year, but next year for sure. And the last two are recent acquisitions and recent British novels that I got from Blackwell's. This one is called 73 Dove Street by Julie Owen Moylan, and published this year. No, it was first published in 2023, but this Penguin edition, 2024. It is set in West London in 1958. The title is The Address, a Shabby Boarding House, and there are characters who live there, and I'm not going to read the rest of the synopsis because that would be ridiculous. I'll read most of the first page. The first chapter is called London. The first chapter has the setting, London, October 1958. Something was burning, a tall plume of black smoke curling high up into the air, accompanied by the crackling of bright orange flames. Edie blinked twice, slowing her pace before finally coming to a halt next to a rusty garden gate. The fizz of sparks climbed upwards, and just to be sure, she blinked again. But there it was. Someone had set a bonfire right in the middle of the pavement. It was one of those London streets that had become a canvas of tatty boarding houses, windows filled with crooked pieces of cardboard saying, "Room to let." The houses all looked the same, bay-fronted with scruffy front gardens filled with dustbins, and children loitering on doorsteps with their runny noses and scraped knees. In one front garden sat an abandoned pram, still bearing the thick, dark traces of the coal it had recently carried, while a surly cat leapt from an open dustbin, where it had been ferreting for scraps. And here is one, an American-Irish writer. The author is Boston-born, came to Ireland in 1974, has been living in County Donegal, I think, ever since, according to this. And it is called Way Out West by Anthony Glavin, and I believe it's set in America. Yep, the protagonist goes to the States from Ireland in the 50s. That was enough. That's all I needed to hear about it to buy it, and we'll see what it's like. This was also published in 2024. First two paragraphs, Chapter 1. A storyline is seldom the shortest distance between 2 points, say Ireland and America. And the fact is that Fintan first headed east across the Irish Sea to London, not west across the North Atlantic. Yet picture this for openers. A little village on the southwest Donegal coast, cottages scattered across a long glen that sweeps back up from the sea. Blue skies that soar over brown hills whenever the grey rain relents. The same hills, green with bracken in spring and flecked with purple in the summer. The blooming heather like specks in a swath of Donegal tweed. Picture, too, a 3-roomed whitewashed cottage on the north side of the glen, with blue trim and a small bier. A turf shed and a small loom shed. A cottage still thatched in 1955, when Fintan was born, but it was re-roofed shortly after with grey fiberglass sheets by his father, Packy. In early memories, the new roof crackled as it expanded in the morning sun, and nettles stung his hands as he foraged beneath the fuchsia hedge for eggs from a hen that refused to lay in the byre. Also, the pungent scent of sheep dip and the milk his mother, Mary, left out to sour for bread-making. her hand gentle on his brow when he fell ill with scarlet fever. Or the sound of Texarkana singing The Streets of Laredo by the open fire in Molly's pub, the first time Mary sent him at age 7 to fetch his father home. Well, I am absolutely, totally head over heels in love with that prose, so this one is probably the one out of all of these, the one I want to read first. Do any of these appeal to you? That's my book haul. Thanks for watching.